My name is Sam. I'm the Partnerships and Communications Manager here at Fairy God Boss. Fairy God Boss is the largest career community for women, and our mission is to improve the workplace by increasing transparency. We offer a variety of free resources to do this, like anonymous company reviews, job listings, articles, virtual recruiting events, and so much more to help women succeed in their careers. Before we get started, we will be recording the webinar and sending it out in a follow-up email later today. So be on the lookout for that. You can watch it back, catch anything you might have missed, or if you just want to send it to a friend, you can do that too. We'll also be doing some Q&A at the end of the webinar. Feel free to use the Q&A feature on your Zoom. You'll find it at the bottom of your screen. Leave your questions there and we will get to as many as possible at the end. This is also going to be a pretty interactive webinar, so feel free to leave comments, thoughts, anything that kind of pops up in between in the chat and interact with each other there. Here with me today is Tara Keach. Tara is the founder and CEO of Burnout Survival. With a background in communication theory plus industry leadership experience as a professional program and project manager, she founded Burnout Survival to provide coaching and workshops to help leaders protect their teams from burnout and learn how to sustainably and holistically lead with influence across their entire stakeholder base. Thanks so much for being here today, Tara. Over to you.
Thanks, Sam. Guys, I am so excited that you're here in this room. We're going to talk more about burnout in just a minute, but I just want to pause and say thank you for showing up. Thank you for being aware of that burnout is an issue and being willing to consider it an opportunity to really lean in to the discomfort and use it as a jumping off point to evolve your ambition into the next chapter. I'm thrilled to be here, and Fairy God Boss, one of my all-time favorite websites ever. I love this community. I love that you're part of it, and I'd love to connect with you there. I do host a group on Fairy God Boss, the Burnout Survivors, and there'll be links to all of that further in, but I would love to have you participate in the conversation there, and we'll continue this discussion there too. So thank you. Make a note of that. All right. So just a high-level overview, some housekeeping stuff. There's some downloads available for you, and then some ground rules, and then we'll dive into some fundamentals and get into the really good stuff next, including what is an evolution of ambition? What am I even talking about? Burnout 101, let's just review some of the basics and give you guys some things to be aware of as you look at yourself and you look at those that you love and that you're closest to. And then let's get to what we all really want to know, which is how to recalibrate on the other side of that. All right. I'm just going to keep going, Sam. If there's any questions that need me to stop outside of that time, I trust that you'll let me know. So for now, guys, there's this link, the workbook. There is a workbook to follow along with. You don't have to have it. It really is just a guide. Any plain old sheet of paper or just your own quiet time and your reflections will suffice. But this is here if you want it. And the slides, this entire deck is posted out there for you too. You don't have to give your email address. Just click in and you can download it. So it's burnoutsurvival.com/FGB. I'm going to leave that up in case anybody's taken that as a quick note, just another second or two. Okay. So first thing I'd like you to think about, and we're just going to take 10 or 15 seconds to think this through, is what is it that you would most like to learn in this opportunity, in this conversation today? Think through, if you were able to prevent burnout, how would life be different? So what about that topic is it that you're most curious about today? And as you're answering that for yourself, I'd ask your help, please, to help ensure that I'm accountable to you to provide you those answers. So if we get to the end and I haven't addressed what you're most curious about, please do raise it there. I want to answer your questions to the best of my ability. So let's dive in. So ground rules, I really don't think we need to say these, but I do want to make sure we're all on the same page. So some of what we're going to talk about today and some of what I'll share with you is going to sound really familiar, or it might feel really confrontational. And for all of those scenarios and everything, I would just ask that you show up with curiosity and open-mindedness, because for me, the biggest lessons I've learned in life are when I've walked in and thought that I knew everything and had the opportunity to dig in and think about ways to apply it a little bit differently. So thank you in advance for that. Also, I encourage you to be real. Like, you're here because you have questions. You're here because you have stories that are from your real life. So let's just be transparent with each other. This is a safe place. And on that note, please do make sure that you're honest with yourself and that you demonstrate kindness. We don't have to sing Kumbaya. We can if you want to, but I would just ask that you all give the same respect that you would hope that you would receive. And then the fourth one is really just confidentiality. Anything that's shared here, this is a safe place, and Fairy God Boss is such an amazing example of creating that psychological safety. So please just carry that forward into this conversation too. All right. Oops, there we are. Oops, sorry. It was slow to load. Okay, so I just want to share really quickly with you a little bit of my story so you know where I'm coming from. I know what burnout feels like. I know what it's like to have it on the personal side and the professional side, and to be sort of somewhere in the middle and not really recognize anything anymore. So my story started, my dad was Air Force, and Mobile was always home base for us. So we started high school. We moved down here to take care of one grandmother who had dementia, and then the other grandmother, who was an alcoholic, moved in with us. And it was, for a high schooler, really kind of a crazy, cool experience. I liked both grandmothers and it was tragic and it was hysterical, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. But that experience on the other side of that, it really gave me this, I felt called to work with dementia caregivers and their patients. So I set off for Denver to get my master's in clinical psychology. And I remember the day and the moment when I had this just like striking clarity that being a therapist was not what I wanted with my life. But there we were. So for me, that was burnout number one. I didn't recognize who I was anymore. The things that I always wanted didn't quite feel right or like they fit in the same way. And for me, that was burnout number one. So in that chapter of my life, I discovered coaching. Some of you guys might know the Life Coach School, that concept that you're able to think about your thoughts intentionally. I plugged into some amazing relationships, started doing some reframing of things that I believed, and shifted how I was choosing to view the world in that moment. And so sort of pulled myself out of that, redirected, and long story short, I wound up back in corporate. I had completed my program and my study and my practicum, but in the corporate world, I accelerated really quickly. But going from research, where I was helping hospice and palliative care caregivers and patients make end-of-life decisions, to working for a Fortune 500, it felt like something was missing, right? There was a lack of continuity for me. And at this point in my life, it was burnout number two, and I was showing all the symptoms of physical exhaustion. I was not sleeping well. I gained a lot of weight. We had 4 miscarriages during that chapter. Just emotionally, my nerves were shot, and I kept having circuitous conflict with people. I don't know if you guys have ever had that, where it feels like you're having the same argument again and again with those people. And then just mentally, I was really phoning it in. I wasn't showing up as my best self in any of the work I was doing anywhere. So really burnt out. So what I did next may not surprise you. Oops, where am I? Excuse me, I wanted to add one more thing. So while I was in those corporate roles and doing consulting, I had the privilege of sitting at the table with some really amazing people. These were dynamic high achievers who had every asset or created every asset for themselves, and the pinnacle of success, right? Medicals being written about. But at the end of the day, and behind closed doors, they would tell me that they still felt like failures, that they felt like they weren't enough, and like they weren't worthy of the that you would expect them to already have. They felt like they weren't worthy of being promoted or being in their role. So some of that imposter syndrome that we hear about sometimes. And they were doing the things that humans do, sabotage in all the different flavors: overeating, over drinking, overspending, destructive relationship patterns. And they were really just miserable. So I kept wondering what was happening. And I think of it like this. This is where I want to talk about evolution of ambition, because it's when you get what you've always worked for and strived for, but it isn't what you expected. It doesn't feel familiar. You don't feel familiar, and you really don't know what to do next. So we experience that, and we can say that we feel stuck, or I don't even know what I want, or I don't even know who I am anymore. And I just want to pause here to see if any of that is familiar to you, just to check in with yourself. Okay. So that's how ambition evolves. You get to this point and you don't know what to do anymore. And for me at that chapter, I went back to basics. I went back to exactly what I had used before. I tapped into more self-coaching. I was looking at my thoughts in a different way. I had new mentors and some of the same mentors there. And I used them to help guide and shape what it is, how I thought about my life. And so it was fascinating to observe, even though I knew all these things, I wasn't doing them, and I wasn't doing them consistently. So what is the puzzle piece, right? And it's not just one. I wish there was a silver bullet. I needed to be accountable for stronger decision-making. I needed to get clear on what it is I really wanted, which can be some of the hardest work. And then I wanted accountability. I wanted people to help support me in getting it done and making sure that I was on the track that best served that end goal that I really wanted. So for me, it was sort of like an aha moment, because it was all that great, like brain science, like this is how our thoughts work. And it was real life, real men and women getting together and being honest with each other. And this is to do and what I'd love to share, especially with leaders who are mission driven and know that they're doing great work in the world, and they just want to equip their teams to thrive. So that's my mechanism. Burnout survival is my answer to that. Now I want to talk about some fundamentals. Well, we're here because burnout is a human issue. You're a human and you are susceptible to burnout. It is completely normal, and change happens, right? When we hit those change points, we are at risk for burnout. So second thing I want is just to understand fundamentally that knowing and doing are two very different things, and that's okay. We're going to talk in a few minutes about how your brain is working to support you in the knowing and in the doing, and how to bridge the gap. And then I want to share with you too that my primary goal for you is to like your reasons for everything that you do. I don't know right or wrong for you. I don't have any advice for anybody. Frankly, I don't have any grounds on which to give anyone any advice, but I do know that for you to live a fulfilled life, you need to like the reasons for what you're doing. And so we're going to talk about how to pay attention to how those reasons are showing up, how you're choosing to think different thoughts to support you in getting to reasons that you like, and how to use all the emotions and the experiences in between to really help fine tune you in getting on that path. Okay. So many of the Fairy God Boss community members quality, and they identify as high achievers. I just want to give you guys a think about whether or not you're a high achiever. So let's talk about it like a quiz, like one of those cosmopolitan quizzes. You might be a high achiever if you always see ways to make things better. If you love checking off boxes, I do like boxes with boxes. I literally check boxes for fun. If you know that you can move the needle on whatever needs to get done whenever it has to get done, if you're the go-to person because you do get things done. And if you say things like, it takes, and you've let it become part of how you see yourself and part of your own reputation, you might be a high achiever. Now, high achievers, we tend to do a little bit differently, and it's just at work, right? You could be a high achiever at home too, or in your personal life. There's a trajectory of high achievers though, and I want you to pay attention to see if this resonates for you. You do all the things, all the boxes, you follow the path, you do it needs to be done, you get the milestones completed, but when you get there, it probably doesn't feel exactly like you thought it would, or it doesn't matter like you thought it would, or it doesn't mean what you thought it would mean. And what do you do when you get to that point, right? So you blame or move the goal. And this might be one of the points where you feel like I'm confronting you a little bit. I just ask that you know that that's okay. I would love to be friends on the other side of this, but my real job is for you to understand how your thoughts work. So please just bear with me if this is at all uncomfortable. So if you reach a goal and it doesn't feel right, it's easiest to blame ourselves, right? And when we blame ourselves, that can look like feeling regret. It can feel like depression. It can be the budding for anxiety to take root. Or, and I love to blame other people, right? It's so much easier to blame other people. You feel disappointment or anger or resentment, right? Those are all big flags that blame is going on. So you can blame and or then you move the goalpost. And when you look at getting a new goal in your life, that logic that's sort of underlying that is something along the lines of, I'm not good enough. I don't belong here. And therefore I need to do more. And if I do this next set of checkboxes, if I do X, Y, Z, I'll be ready. and I'll be worthy and it'll feel right. Okay. So blaming other people and moving the goalpost is really some of the, just how we're wired to respond when we hit that point of evolution of ambition where it doesn't quite feel right. We don't know what to do next. So it's your fault, it's my fault. And then we got to do something different because I haven't been doing it good enough. Okay. So you move onward, except your reasons absolutely suck. Remember how I said, I want you to like your reasons for what it is that you do. Okay. So when you're doing things out of reasons that suck, it's never going to feel good. It's not going to feel like enough, and it's going to lead you to burnout. Okay. Doing things for reasons that you don't like really creates burnout. So let's talk about burnout. This is in your guide too. But as I define burnout, it is physical, mental, and emotional exhaustion. And I love that word exhaustion. I feel like we can all sort of like feel it. We know what that's like. I included some links here to some of the most recent literature that's come out, but it doesn't take a mountain of evidence to know NOUT has its personal costs, and it impacts you professionally too. So I just included that for those of you that are interested. There's really good research being done specifically around medical professions. So if you're curious if that's your thing, I wanted to put it out there. So I want to run through some symptoms of those 3 different types of exhaustion, and really keep them in your hip pocket, sort of like a checkpoint if you're feeling them yourself or if you're people that you love. These are listed in that workbook too, so you don't have to take quick notes. So emotion, when you're feeling exhausted, there's this constant undercurrent of anxiety. I'm not talking about diagnosable anxiety or panic attacks, right? But it's sort of like you're always looking for the other shoe to drop. If it's really hard for you to find joy, especially in things that used to bring you joy, if you're pessimistic more than you used to be, if that was never one of your character traits, even describe yourself, but now you're seeing yourself just constantly seeing the worst case scenario. Frustration and irritability are another big one. When you're snapping at people or just feel yourself tap eyes, like that's a flag that you might be emotionally exhausted. And then here's the other one, right? Lack of satisfaction in your win. So it just doesn't feel right when you get there. It's not quite good enough. I'm not satisfied, even though you've done all the things, right? It's hard to see those as wins when you're feeling emotionally exhausted. Okay, next up, mental exhaustion. I love having lack of creativity on here because even if you're not like traditionally artistic, we use creativity in the way that we tackle our logistic problems, in the way that we have relationships with other people and communicate with other people, in the way that we project manage or handle anything day to day. That exercises creativity. So if you're feeling really stuck or constrained or confined in creativity, that might be a flag for you that you're mentally exhausted. If you're super critical and you never used to be, but you're just always sort of like nitpicking yourself or others. If you feel like your purpose is separate from where you are or where you want to be, you just can't identify what your purpose is anymore, like you never had it or you don't remember what it is. Or if you're forgetful or with because I'm not talking about dementia here, I'm talking about like you just walk in the room and you remember exactly what it was. Those are all signs of mental exhaustion. And then let's talk about physical exhaustion. This one's much more tangible for many of us. It is fatigue, it's insomnia, not going to sleep or waking up in the middle and not going back to sleep. Zero social plans can feel like a point of conviction for many of my clients. If you're not making social plans or you're making them and you're not keeping them because you're too tired, those are all flags that you might be physically exhausted. If your performance is suffering, you're just not able to do what you expect you should be able to do. Or if you have trouble getting started, like you just can't drag yourself out of bed in the morning, those all might mean you're physically exhausted. Okay, so why does preventing and recovering from burnout matter? I'm sure you guys can all imagine, and you wrote the answers down, right? Like how, why is this important to you? Human, and you have infinitely better things to do with your energy and your time and your days and your thoughts, right? But when you're burnout and you're exhausted, all of those reserves are completely depleted. Here's the thing, to make the difference in your life, in the lives of those that you love and the work that you do, you have to start with yourself, because you're the only capable of making the difference that you're here to do. You got to start with yourself. So let's think about how the opposite of burnout acts. And you just take a moment, you can write it down now, or please revisit these slides and check in with the workbook. I want you to think about what the opposite of burnout feels like. How do you know when you're thriving? How do you know when you're healthy? How do you know when you're aligned and living a life that you love? All of your answers to those questions give you a really clear picture of what the opposite of burnout feels like. I'm just going to pause here for a second, take a sip of water while you guys think through your answers to that, okay? Okay. Now, let's talk about the actual root cause of burnout. So intuitively, and we read articles all the time, that burnout is caused by a lack of work-life balance. It's caused by having no control of what you're doing or what you want to do. If you're trying to be everything to everyone, just super over-allocated, you're heart-centered or service-oriented, or if you're not feeling supported socially or professionally or at home, right? We all sort of like think that that causes burnout. And I'm going to say that those are not the causes of burnout. These are all exacerbations of burnout. They do not cause burnout, because the root cause of burnout are two things: scarcity thinking and poor planning. This is the other part where I've had friends tell me that they felt really angry at me as I was going through this presentation. We're going to talk about what each of these things mean. So ask if you are feeling confronted, if you're even talking about, please lean into that curiosity. So scarcity thinking and poor planning are the root cause of burnout. Scarcity thinking, first up, is any time that there's a lack or a gap or something that you wish you had more of. Anything. I'm talking about time, money, love, joy, worthiness, fitness, help. All those things are examples of scarcity thinking. Okay. So scarcity thinking, I wish I had more time, money, affection, passion, friends, family, love, right? Okay. Also, I'm not whatever enough. I'm not fit enough, strong enough, smart enough, young enough, creative enough, old enough. Okay. Those are all examples of scarcity thinking. And we're going to pay attention in the next couple minutes in our time together about how scarcity thinking automatically creeps to our day-to-day lives and how we're managing our thoughts and working towards goals and getting out of burnout. Okay, scarcity thinking is super sneaky. It serves a purpose, and your purpose from now on is attention to it. Okay, so take a minute and reflect for yourself where scarcity thinking might be coming up for you in your day-to-day life. What is it that you most wish that you had more of in this moment? What do you wish you were more of? And then as you're thinking those thoughts, I want you to reflect on how it feels, right? What emotion does that bring up? And when you're feeling that emotion, what action do you take? How do you respond when you're feeling scarcity? For many of us, and for me, for my clients, I hear this almost daily, that they respond with fear responses, which typically means that they get overwhelmed and super over allocated trying to solve all the problems all at once and nothing ever really gets done, or they do nothing. Those are just two really typical responses, but I want you to think for yourself, how do you respond when you're thinking scarcity thoughts and feeling those emotions? Okay. So scarcity thinking is the first cause of burnout. The second cause is poor planning. Again, it's okay if you're feeling convicted. Poor planning has three different components. It's not what you want, avoiding the decision to get it, or not doing what you know you need to do once you've decided that that's what you want. We're going to talk about the inverse. This is how we're going to apply the recalibration after burnout, but I want you just to be aware of what's driving poor planning. Okay. So now you know that's like, great, Tara, super sarcastic. I can hear you now. Like, now what? What am I supposed to do with that? Well, the only way to change how you feel is to change the way that you think. If you're feeling those symptoms of burnout, if those flags are being raised for you, then it's your brain and your body trying to tell you that it's an opportunity for you to do this recalibration work, right? Because the only way to change that emotional experience is to change the thoughts that are driving that. So super good news. And this is where I get a little giddy, nerdy. So burnout really just means that your beautiful brain is doing its job, right? This is where all that psychology is going to come in. So when you're looping through scarcity thoughts, when your planning is just in the toilet, right? And you're ready to stop feeling stuck. You're ready to stop being burnout. It's an opportunity for you to assess. Okay, I want you to think of it like an opportunity. to start this new chapter of your life. Before we do that, I give you guys some fundamentals about the psychology that is at play, because your brain is doing such a beautiful job keeping you alive. Let's talk about some of these ways, the mechanisms that your brain is work this way. Okay, so there's three different functions, features of your brain that I want to call out for you. The first is your prefrontal cortex, and if you're somewhere where you can, just put your hand in the front of your forehead right now. This is where your prefrontal cortex lives. I love thinking of my prefrontal cortex like a queen, right? This is where the executive planning happens. All those high-level decisions get made in the prefrontal cortex. That future visioning and planning happens up here. It's like a queen in my mind, surveying all the options, looking at the whole chessboard. Here's the thing. Using this part of your brain literally requires more energy. It is more draining to do thinking. It is also the same belief that you get what you pay for. The more that you intentionally invest that energy in doing that level of executive thinking and decision making and planning, the better results you're going to get. Just know that your brain wants to conserve energy, and so it doesn't want you to do that. Okay, so it's sort of always a battle between prioritizing your energy. Next up, neural expressways. Like, cross your fingers and put it on top of your head, because neural expressways are everywhere. So thoughts work. If you think about in your brain, there's all these neurons, right? This neuron wants to have a thought with this neuron. So the very first time you think a new thought or learn something new, a very faint electrical current goes between the two neurons, and a really fine line, a really small pathway is made. Okay? The more you think a thought, the more automatic it becomes, because that connection gets deeper and wider. It's called entrenchment. Literally like digging, it's like the Grand Canyon. Your brain wants to be so super efficient that the easiest thought path to take is the thought that it's going to take. So the more that you practice a thought, the more that you see evidence that something is right, that neural expressway gets wider, and it becomes like the super highway for your thoughts to connect. Okay, this is at play all day long. And it's a beautiful way to think about your brain just doing its job to try to conserve energy and keep you alive and make smarter decisions faster. Okay. Next up is your amygdala. So the last one, if you want to take your hand and put it on the back of your head, right, sort of where it dips back here. This is a beautiful part of your limbic system. This is where fight, flight, or freeze happens. It is what keeps you alive. This part of your brain, like out of the box as human beings, this amygdala is designed to keep you alive. So it hotwires your brain to make sure that you're responding to threats or fear that come up. So constantly, your amygdala is surveying all around to see where the threats are and what you need to be aware of and what response you need to take to keep yourself. Okay. I don't know if you guys have ever watched the cartoon The Croods. I have a 5-year-old and 2-year-old, so we watch The Croods sometimes, and it's like this cave day family, and they constantly want to stay afraid. Like, that's their objective, because fear keeps them alive. So I imagine, like, in cave days, staying alive by constantly being aware of the threats that are around you. Okay, so all this means is that your brain is doing its job. When you hit symptoms of burnout, your brain, your beautiful brain, is doing its job to keep you alive, because this tripod of survival, if your brain does these three things, you as a human being have tremendous odds of survival. So first up, it wants to help you seek pleasure. It wants you to eat the sweet berries because they're not poisonous. It wants you to have sex because then your genes are carried forward in the gene pool. It wants you to avoid pain. Don't go outside the cave because the tiger is going to eat you. Don't crawl through the brambles because they're poisonous and they're going to hurt you. And conserve your energy, right? Because you don't know, and again, like cave days programming, you don't know where your next meal is going to come from. So seek pleasure, avoid, and conserve energy. Automatically, your brain is doing this all day long in 2020 to help keep you alive. So now that you see it and you know what it's doing, we can say, thank you, brain. But because I'm having these symptoms of burnout, what am I supposed to do with that? And burnout is your brain and your body telling you to check in, that there's an opportunity for you to do what you need to do to survive at a greater level, to succeed even more. So these responses aren't serving you. These automatic thoughts, there's something up there that's not quite serving you. So for me, it's a really beautiful opportunity. The more you're willing to listen and learn from that discomfort, emotional discomfort, that exhaustion, the more that you can align your reasons to evolve your ambition with intention and really like unleash excellence. Unleash what you're capable of. Discomfort is the currency to your success. The more that you're willing to sit with whatever negative emotions are coming up, whatever pain points and trauma and drama keep coming up or present in this burnout that are making it feel even worse, like that discomfort is key. We're going to talk more about how to do that, how to tune into it in just a minute. Okay, so to evolve your ambition, to recalibrate after burnout, there's two things, and it's really the inverse of the causes of burnout. The first step is thought curation, and the second is strong planning. Your workbook has lots of opportunities for you to download this and go through these exercises together. I encourage you to go back and review these slides or bring your examples within the Fairy God Boss Burnout Survival Group, and let's talk about it there. So your thoughts determine your experience. Let's talk about that. Okay, these are universal truths based in psychology. The only thing that will change the way that you feel is to change the way that you think. This model is how to do that. Every book you've ever read, every podcast or TED Talk you've ever seen is trying to give you thoughts to think. This is how those thoughts. All right, so this is not intended to be silver lining. I am not trying to whitewash things or give you happy thoughts. This is not for you to be oblivious to what's going on. I want you to use this model instead to pay really close attention to what's actually going on. I want you to use it as a tool to see the truth of your situation so that you can intentionally step into creating the results that you want. Okay, so it's super simple. It is the most simple thing, and it is the hardest thing to look at your thoughts and apply this model. It pays off in every single way. This isn't just for work, this is for life, this is for human existence. And once you learn this model, you'll be able to see your thoughts in every single situation you have. I use the term thought curation because I like the idea of a museum curator who goes through and selects the artwork to feature. In a similar way, we're going to practice how to look at your thoughts and choose which thoughts will best serve you. Okay, so add to the helper being a pleaser. We try to please everyone. You're right. Okay, so this thought curation model has 5 different elements. CTFAR, it's a very uncatchy acronym. This is borrowed directly from the life coach school, but it's based entirely in cognitive behavioral science. This is such a beautiful way to think about how your thoughts are right now. So circumstance. As humans, we walk throughout our days and our lives encountering circumstances. I want you to think of circumstance as the data points, right? The actual fact of the situation that you encounter. It is in Mobile, Alabama, like 72 degrees outside. When you're in traffic, traffic is this rate, at this rate of speed and with this volume. This person said these words to me. Those are all facts. They're provable in court. You know you have a circumstance when everyone would agree that that is the circumstance. But as human beings, we encounter circumstances, and then our big, beautiful brains are triggered to have a thought in response to them. So I want you to, for the purpose of this model, think of a thought, one singular thought, as sort of like the teleprompter of your brain. It's that one sentence that runs through your mind about that circumstance, and it's completely optional. So if you want to imagine like a gigantic set of encyclopedias, every experience you've ever had as a human is part of this encyclopedia. This is what you were told when you were 8 years old. This is what you, the TED Talk, this is in a book that you read. And you've practiced this thought all the way in between. So your brain goes to this encyclopedia and picks out this thought to think in response to this circumstance. Okay, thoughts are completely optional once they reach that level of awareness. Okay, I'm talking about the conscious thoughts. So once it runs past your brain like a teleprompter, your brain tells your body to have an experience as a feeling. I want you to think of, imagine feelings are like a vibration in your body. For me, it's sort of easy to imagine like excitement, like right before this webinar, I was feeling like that little butterfly feeling, like that little effervescence in my gut. When I feel anxiety, I feel it along around my neck muscles, my shoulders sort of tense up and I get concave in here. So think of your emotions and where you feel them in your body, okay? Once our brain has a thought in response to a circumstance, we experience a feeling. Positive and negative spectrum feelings, none of them are good or bad. They are all just flags. There's a lot in the middle too, right? So it's okay that you have a neutral thought. It's okay that you just feel calm or confident or sure. Those are feelings that count too. But in response to that feeling, we take action. So have a circumstance, a thought is selected, your brain has a thought in response to it, you experience an emotion because of that thought, then you take an action. When I say action, that can mean reaction or inaction, anything that you do or don't do in direct response to that emotion. I want to pause here because this is a really important point. Look at those lines. You only ever take an action because of how you want to or how you want to avoid feeling. Some questions coming through. I'm going to finish this result line and then I'm going to look at the questions really quick, Sam, just to see if there's points I can clarify. So once you take an action or avoid, and there's a result because of that. So this is what the action creates. And it's like magic, guys. Your result will always prove your thought. So if there's a result you're getting that you don't want, or result you're not getting that you do want, there's a thought that's proving that result for you. Okay, so let me pause here and see. What about burning out from doing the same job for too long and you feel stuck? Let's see, that was from MG Jen. Let's come back to that. I think that's a great example, from doing the same job for too long and you feel stuck. We're going to go through some examples in a few minutes and all of you to use your own examples as we look at this, but I'll use this one specifically, sort of a hot seat. Oh, thank you for asking. I love that. So let's go through some examples. I use this one pretty generically, work and self-care harmony. I think almost every person I've ever met in the world can identify with having to find balance, and I call it self-care harmony because I don't know that it's ever equally balanced. But let's just say that the circumstance is you are working to accomplish your project and you haven't taken care of yourself physically or practically the ways that you know you want to. You haven't been exercising, you haven't been your checkbook, you haven't been drinking your water, whatever that is for you, okay? That's a circumstance. It's provable. Those are all data points. In response to that circumstance, you have a thought about that. And the automatic thoughts that I experience are, there's just too much to do. I can't take a time away from this project, right? Thought. The feeling I have in response to that thought is overwhelm. Like automatically I feel overwhelmed, feel anxious, feel self-pitiful, like poor me. My brain loves to go to self all the time. Most popular go-to emotions for me. And then I feel stressed, right? So in response to those feelings, I get up early, I stay up late, I continue a pattern of no self-care. And the result, when you continue not to take care of yourself, is that you decline your physical, mental, and emotional well-being. And you don't perform as well because you're not taking care of yourself. You're not performing optimally. And if you look at that result, it proves that thought. So you're declining proves the thought that there's too much to do and I can't take time away. Clearly you can't because your well-being's diminished. You're not performing well. How can you take time away? Do you see how it loops together? Okay. All right. So a couple things to pay attention to, just using this as an example of a thought model. Those feelings of overwhelm and anxiety flags for you to pay attention to. That is your body telling you that there's thoughts at play that aren't serving you. And then when you look at this thought, there is scarcity thinking, there's poor planning. So there's too much to do. There's not enough time. There's not enough energy. That's all scarcity thinking. I'm not saying that there aren't true thoughts here. We're going to get to that in a second. And I can't take time away from the project is poor planning. So the scarcity thinking, there's too much to do, will always create that overwhelm or that anxiety. What you can instead, we're going to get to in just a minute. Okay. So let's talk about transition. I know many of us have gone through transitions that and we couldn't have seen coming. I was working with a client who was laid off, and she was a top performer in her company and did not see it coming. The company went in a new direction is the line she was given, right? So she was in the midst of a transition that she did not expect. I want you to think through automatically, like some of those thoughts that come up for you automatically to that. Okay. Those automatic thoughts, how does that feel? And what action do you take in response to that? Or what emotion do you want to avoid? Action do you take? And then the result you get as a direct result of that action will prove those thoughts. Okay. Now, your workbook, and I want to use this example that we talked through just a moment ago. I want you to think through a challenge that you're facing, something weighing on your mind. Okay. Now let's see, where is that comment, Jen? MG Jen. So burning out from doing the same job for too long and you feel stuck. So using this as an example, thank you for your comment. So the circumstance is you have been in a job for, I don't know, 10 years, right? I'm just gonna pull out facts. You're welcome to plug them in and say, you can correct me. Okay, so you're the same job for too long and you feel stuck. So circumstance, you've been doing this job for 10 years. Thought, I've been doing this job for too long and I'm stuck. And that feeling is stuck. The feeling is all of those emotional, mental, and physical exhaustions too, right? When you feel stuck, when you're experiencing that emotion of stuck, what do you do? And there's no right answer. There's no textbook way that people respond. It's important for you to observe how you're responding though. So I could guess that in response to feeling stuck, you might not apply for new jobs. You might not go to networking events or lunches with friends who might be connections. You might take inaction instead of action. And the result of that is that you continue to stay in the job, not seeing new opportunities. It's the thought that you are stuck and I've been doing this job too long. Does that make sense? At the end of this, we're going to flip the script a little bit. Thank you, Jim. I'm going to flip the script a little bit, but let's go. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit content-wise. So getting to thoughts will help you create the different results. It's really important. Sugarcoating anything, you need to get to a neutral and believable thought that will help generate feelings, that will fuel actions, that will create what you want. So circumstance, let's look at this again. Okay, circumstance is, I've been in this job 10 years. Alternative neutral thought, I am able to stay. Look at this track record of performance. Look at what I would be able to do for another company. It has to be true for you. I know I'm just pulling things out of the air here, but if you can get to a neutral that gives you somewhat more of a neutral feeling to help you take action to apply for a job or network or, you know, peruse a job board. Fairy Godboss has a ton of resources for all of those tactical solutions. The result could be that you then apply to jobs, or you ask for a recommendation for a new job, or let somebody know that you're on the market. Okay. I encourage you to think through this for yourself, guys. Whatever is the challenge that you're facing, there's more, we're going to go through more exercises, and there's opportunities in your workbook to do this work for yourself too. Think through a challenge that you're facing. Okay. All right. So for you, we actually just did the hot seat, and Jen, if we have time at the end, I'd be glad to do more of these. This is powerful work. And if it hurts and you want to resist thinking about what you're thinking about, or naming your feelings feels hard, please know that that's a point of encouragement. That means that you're doing it right. Your brain doesn't want to use this prefrontal cortex to do that executive level self-reflection. Okay, so the fact that it's a little hard is a really good sign, like high five, virtual gold star. If it hurts, you're doing it right. Okay, so just a reminder, when to use this thought model, I think all day long in every possible situation, but specifically if you are feeling stuck. If you're feeling unsure about what it is that you want, or what your purpose is, or what matters about the work that you're doing. If you don't know what you want, right? That's another really common one. I hear it from every client I work with. I don't even know what I want anymore. That's okay. I think that's a really good sign, because the fact that you acknowledge that means that your brain is ready to help you evolve your ambition to this next chapter. So results that you don't want, in experiencing indulgent emotions like that guilt, like that self-pity, right? Like all that stress and anxiety and exhaustion, this is when to use thought curation, because you're ready for a change. Burnout really is just your brain doing its job, telling you that you're ready to change. Okay, more examples coming up. So let's talk specifically, and I kind of want you guys to like stretch for a second. Okay, let's talk about this next chapter, what it means. And in burnout, you are in there now. Let's recalibrate to get into this next chapter. Okay. So strong planning, the inverse of poor planning, is really just these 3 steps. Again, this is super simple and super hard. I know that. The first step is what it is that you want. Excuse me, knowing what you want. So, and that can mean deciding what you want. It can feel hard when you've been in survival mode for a really long time. to even imagine wanting again. So this step one be really big. I want you to get creative. We're going to talk through some tactics about how to tap into that creative experience again. Here we go. Know what you want. So I love this exercise. This is in the workbook too. This is one of the many ways to tackle this, but I love asking these questions. Defining what you want goes in that results line of your model. So MG Jen, I'm going to go, oops, excuse me. I'm going to go back to your question. So feeling been there too long. Your result that you want might be, I want to be in a job making X dollars with Y benefits doing Z scope of work. Okay. I want you to get super specific, like data point specific, as close as you can get to the result. Okay. I don't want you to put feelings in the result line yet. You can, but for this first pass, clear on the result that you want. Okay. I want my laundry room to be tidied. I want the detergent here. I want the clean clothes, dirty clothes, red clothes, all the bins. Like, get specific with yourself about what result you want. This applies to everything in life. Okay. Once you've drafted it, and it's okay to have many things that you want, we're just going to pick one for this exercise. I want you to think about why you, when you start to get clear on the why, all of those reasons plug in as optional thoughts for you to channel and pull from as you're starting to take strategic action. I love Simon Sinek's work, kind of a nerd over what he does. He does this great exercise that is asking why 5 different times to get to your root why. So let's say, MG Jen, you want to get this new job. Why do you want that? And you ask yourself, because I want a job where the work I do matters. Why is that important? It's important to me because I know that I'm capable of doing good. Why is that reason important to you? Why does that matter? Because I know that I can make a positive difference in the world. And you just keep going through iterations of answering that question for yourself. And it's almost like you do have a discomfort or a physical result, like there's a resonance when you get to the why that is your motivating why. So I encourage you to dig in there, get really clear on why you want what it is that you want. And then let's talk about feelings. So how will you feel as you experience it? Once you're in that job, how do you want to feel? Like, I want to feel joyful. One of mine feelings that I channel all the time is purposeful and fulfilled. I want to feel purposeful and fulfilled. Those are emotions to me. Within your workbook, I link out to Polchik's Wheel of Emotions. There's all sorts of emotional lists. There's a dictionary of emotions on Amazon. I highly recommend it. It's super fun to look through. Sometimes it can be really hard to list the emotions that we want. Think of it like it's a gigantic menu. Pick the ones that feel the best for you and plug those into your model. So what you want goes in your result line, thoughts go into why, and feelings, how you want to feel as you're experiencing it, go into your feeling line. Okay. You've listed out all the things that you want, one specifically for this exercise. Then you have to decide to actually get it. Okay. Deciding can be hard, but I want you to make sure that you're deciding to do reasons that you like. Okay. If you're just doing something because you're afraid or you're feeling that scarcity, it's never going to feel good. That result you get is never going to be in alignment with what you're capable of or what you really want. Then, only then, do you start to think actions you can take. Because tactically, logistically, we can do probably a dozen different things to get any specific result. The action is really the least important part. It's making sure that your thoughts and feelings are in line to create a crystal clear result. Then the actions will be intuitive. Okay. I also know that deciding is a big deal. It's a commitment, and I don't take it lightly. I hope you don't take it lightly either. So it's okay to give yourself a runway to make a decision. One of the tools I use is the decide by date. So give yourself a week. Make it a really proactive week where you're researching your other options and exploring things you might want. Give yourself whatever it is, just make a commitment to yourself to decide by that date. And then it's doing it. So strong planning, knowing what you want, deciding to get it, and then actually doing it. This is where thought curation comes in big time, because once you have a crystal big result, then every day you've got to show up with little thought models to help you achieve that big result. Okay. When you feel resistance, that is a gift from the universe or from God, whatever you believe in. When you feel resistance, it's like, okay, what am I trying to avoid? What thought is sabotaging me in this moment? What don't I really believe about the thoughts that I'm trying to think? lean in discomfort. The more you're willing to look at your own discomfort and be a student of your resistance, the more powerful action you're going to be able to take. It's literally an investment in your future, right? Discomfort is an investment in your future. Okay, so thoughts on purpose. This is a beautiful opportunity, and there's a worksheet in the back of your workbook, but really just make a list. I use my notebook all the time. Thoughts that I choose to think on purpose. And they're like my go-to, really. If there's something that I'm resisting, I go back to these thoughts like, oh yes, this is it. And I practice thinking on purpose, because when you practice thinking on purpose, learning, and when you're learning, you're digging that neural entrenchment deeper and wider. Okay, you can use your psychology, use your brain to help create the results that you really want. So observe the automatic thoughts. They're there because they think they're doing the good job. Hey brain, I see you. Like, thank you for doing that. And this is what we choose to think on purpose instead. Okay, let's see. All right, so, excuse me. When you do your own model, I use the acronym, right? CTFAR all the time. I use it on the left side of my paper. You can do it whatever feels right to you, but think about your current situation. Think about the result that you really want. And these are the ones we just went through. This is just how it might look if you did it out on your own, okay? What result do you really want? What action do you want to take to get there? What have you decided? What feeling will fuel you to take that action? Getting on a webinar, I felt really nervous, right? But the one was to make connection and share this information with you guys. So it fueled me to feel purposeful and fulfilled as I did this action. Thoughts that I had to think to help me get on here is like, this is an amazing thing to share with people. The more people that know how their thoughts work, the better off the world will be. Okay. So please, when you catch yourself in scarcity thinking, because you're going to see it now, you're going to leave here and tonight, tomorrow, next week, next month, you're gonna be like, oh, this is scarcity. This is what she was talking about. I want you just to observe it with curiosity. Like, there's no judgment there. Your brain is doing its job, but you can ask yourself these questions. What emotion is this? Why am I thinking this? Are there assumptions that I'm automatically thinking that don't serve me anymore? And I love asking this question, what emotion do I most want to avoid right now? And then you can hold yourself accountable. Is the action I'm taking going to get me the result that I really want? Just observe the thoughts that you want to create the results that you want for reasons that you like. Okay, so your evolution of ambition, this other side of burnout, is when you're intentionally determining what you want, deciding to get it for reasons that you like, and then taking the action that's required to get it. That's how you evolve your ambition on purpose, with intention. So I've got a couple things I just want to share with you as we carry forward. What we've covered so far is what is evolution of ambition. We looked at some of the basics of burnout, the 101 symptoms and risks, and then we talked about some tools that you can use to recalibrate and thrive on the other side of it. Now, I'd love your feedback. I want good and bad thoughts. Anything that I think is more impactful, please do. I'd appreciate your time to share with me. It's at burnout.com/FGB. It's also where your slides, the workbook live. And then there's the link one more. And now we have open floor for discussion. Let's see.
Hi, Tara. Thanks so
Hey, hey.
much for that amazing presentation. We did have a number of questions come through while you were talking. So let's get started and see how many we can get to.
Awesome.
We had an anonymous attendee say, I guess it depends, but how long does it normally take to recover from burnout? I've been on leave from work for about 4 months so far due to burnout, but I'm still not back at 100%. Oh,
I don't have a standard answer. I wish I could say that there was normal and abnormal times. It does vary, but I would encourage you to do, and it sounds like you are taking really proactive steps to take care of yourself. The specific question was on timelines, and I don't have an answer for that, but I would ask that you do your own sort of thought downloads about the thoughts that are at play there, and look at being open to what it is you might want in this next chapter.
Thanks. Naomi asks, how can I handle a known transition and trying to do job searching while working to do the best job I can in my current job?
I love this one. And I had a parallel experience myself last year as I was exiting corporate and going full-time into my business. So I want you to get to some neutral thoughts about doing both. It sounds like you're doing amazing work. It's easy for me to pull out neutral thoughts for you. So these are really just you they need to be something that you believe, but you could say, look at this amazing opportunity I'm creating for myself, or I'm grateful for my current job that's basically underwriting my next chapter, because your current job is writing the paycheck that's helping you get equipped for this job search. And then get really specific with the results too, because I know the day-to-day is heavy and it's a lot. So get really specific. I want to send out 5 targeted applications this week, or I want to reach out to 5 people in my network with specific requests this week for support, or let them know. The more specific you can get about what it is that you want to create, it's inversely proportional to the amount of overwhelm you feel. Please let me know if that didn't make sense. Yeah.
We had another question from Corey come in saying, I'm struggling to even determine what I want. Do you have any tools that you'd recommend that can help me figure that out?
Yeah, I really, I know this is a stretch, but I'd like you to flex those creative muscles a little bit. And it's similar to working out, right? It can be really hard to get back in the habit of wanting something. So get an ugly notebook is my favorite piece of advice. Like something you could burn, because I love pretty notebooks and I love pretty pens, and it always makes me feel like I want to put only really pretty things in there. Get an ugly notebook that you can recycle or burn on the other side of it, and get yourself things that you would want. There's an exercise I like to share called Be, Do, Feel, So, where you just make all the things that you would want to be, all the things that you might do, have, all the things that you might want to have or feel. And then for each of those answers, go back and answer. So I want to feel fulfilled. So I know that my time here has been well spent. Or I want to feel appreciated, so that I know that my work matters to others. Dig in. It's super hard work, I know that. And like, I'm sending you like a virtual hug of space once it's out of routine.
Yeah, I mean, I also want to just throw in there, a lot of you are asking a similar question of, I don't even know what I want to do. How do I even start? And we had a really great webinar yesterday with a host who talked about finding your job that you actually want to do and finding a career that works for you. So I'm going to send out the link to that, just like in the notes section of the email I send out later today, because I think a lot of you will find that really helpful.
Thanks.
But a great question that came through that I really want to ask is, when does burnout become depression or a health concern from a toxic environment? How do you recognize that it's becoming something more than just burnout?
Yeah, and I think that's a really important question. I'm glad you're being observant of that too. I'm not a therapist. I got my master's. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a counselor. So my recommendation is, if you're struggling to function like you normally would, then that's a sign that please do seek additional help. And there's lots of people out there, and I could recommend to a couple if you're in a couple different states, but I'm not the best resource for exactly who. But please know, if you're not functioning, if you really are struggling to perform at your normal levels, that might be time to seek external care. But start with your thoughts, make sure they're clean, and then if you need help, there's plenty of help out there.
Great. Well, there are a few more questions. I want to encourage everybody to join Tara's group on Fairy Godboss called Burnout Survival. I'll also include a nice bold link to that in today's email. It was also in the chat, so if you scroll up, you'll probably see it there. But ask your questions there. She'll be answering there. She's on her group all the time. She's an extremely active member of our community, and I'm sure that she'd be happy to answer any questions that we could not get to today. So thank you again so much, Tara. This was a really great conversation.
I appreciate you guys being here. Sam, thank you for making it possible. Like, for you, my attendees, like, thank you for being here and looking at your thoughts and this experience. It's been a joy.
Yes, thank you so much to everybody, and we will see you at the next one. Have a great rest of your day and week. Bye.
Bye.